Hi, my name is Tristan Rice, Director of Methodology with an emphasis in training systems from Exos.
And I'm Kapil Parakh, a cardiologist and medical lead at Fitbit.
And what we want to talk about now is something that is incredibly important to not only your members, but also probably you, and that's stress management. Understanding the role that it plays in our lives and giving a toolbox to be able to manage that in the moment. So stress is something that people are constantly bombarded by,
Sure.
right? The stress of being underslept, the stress of being overfed but undernourished, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stress from work and family and exercise and these sorts of things. I wonder, is there a way for a wearable to, if it's tracking things like sympathetic nervous system activity
Sure.
through heart rate variability, to give us an indication of how much stress somebody is under?
That's a great question. I'll just double down on that observation. First of all, the pandemic has made things so much worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like mental health, huge problem. It was a problem before, but the pandemic has just made stress and just mental health in general a much bigger problem than it used to be. And in fact, in September, the government released a new recommendation that adults should be screened for anxiety because of the amount of stress and mental health challenges that we've all been under over the course of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
So huge public health problem. Now, how can wearables help? That's a great question. We talked about heart rate variability, and one of the things that influences heart rate variability through your sympathetic nervous system is mental health. So like if you're stressed or you're anxious, you can see changes in heart rate variability.
Yep.
But because heart rate variability is non-specific, you need more than just that.
All systems indicator.
It is. And so the other thing that wearables like Fitbit can detect is the conductance of your skin, how sweaty you are.
Oh, interesting.
So sort of like if you've seen a movie with a lie detector,
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
they'll check on that, and so when you get stressed, when you sympathetic nervous gets, you get sweaty, and that technically is called electrodermal activity. It's the transmission of electricity through the skin.
Across the skin.
And so the combination of heart rate variability and electrodermal activity is algorithmically sort of calculated with the Sense2 device, and it gives an alert when it detects a period of stress based on those measurements in the algorithm. Exactly. And the device doesn't give you in the moment, because the last thing you need when you're stressed is your watch going off saying, hey, you're stressed. But about 5 minutes later, it'll give you a notification, and you can then log something to say, oh yeah, that was actually a period of stress, or not, because this idea that like data should be validated with what you're feeling, that's part of that
The data
experience.
is agnostic. There needs to be some interpretation.
Exactly, and it's not perfect. So it might be that you're getting this notification at 4 p.m. on a Friday, and you're in happy hour, or you're in a meeting with your boss.
Yeah, right.
Different connotations there,
Sure.
right? And so you might be excited and happy, and your HRV went up because your heart rate's up and you're a little sweaty because of those reasons, versus like you're actually under a moment of stress. And so the logging and reflection can help you over there, and it helps you figure out kind of what's happening at that time. Now, I personally think this is a very exciting development. I'm a cardiologist, but my PhD in epidemiology was around depression and heart disease.
Oh, interesting.
And so the interplay between like mental health and physical health is important to me.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noticed in my PhD is like the only way I could figure out whether somebody was having these symptoms was to ask them, either a questionnaire or an interview.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine telling somebody, are you stressed? Are you stressed
intrusive.
now? It's intrusive. It makes you stressed.
Right, yeah.
And so this is great, because now you have this passive measure that's happening in the background that's giving you alerts and giving you an opportunity to reflect, say, I get stressed. These are the patterns that I'm noticing. Is it happening on every Friday, for example?
Sure.
And then it has an opportunity to intervene and see the effect of that intervention. So let's say you decide,
is it effective or not?
Biofeedback, that's exactly right. So like, let's say you do a breathing exercise or a workout.
Yeah.
Does that sort of taper that down or not?
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, because we think about somebody's ability to have inner awareness, right? Like that they then are in the moment able to recognize their interoceptive, their cognitive, their emotional sort of status, but then not only have the awareness of the sort of level that they're at, but be able have the tools in the toolbox to be able to self-regulate, right? So that you can, the classic example is you're laying in bed and you can't fall asleep, right? And you're thinking about not being able to fall asleep, and it just just makes things worse, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so you're up here, but you should be down here. How do you bring yourself back down?
Right.
Well, the first step in that is recognizing that the level that you're at is off, right?
Yep.
And so I think it's really interesting that the wearable is able to sort of pull that out, right? Eliminate some of the guesswork for you and just say, here was a period of stress, right? So that you then are able to have this sort of retroactive reflection on, well, yeah, that actually was a stressful event.
Sure.
So that you can then come to a coach and maybe the coach will be able to recommend some regulation activities for you, right? In our game plans, we talk about regulation where, you know, we can help somebody develop a toolbox of strategies to be able to upregulate or downregulate their level in the moment. Another example of thinking about not being able to fall asleep when you should be asleep.
Right.
Well, there you need to downregulate, right? How do you bring your level down? And you know, they're really good examples, really simple examples that are absolutely free, that anybody can do anywhere, right? Like breath.
Yeah.
You know, if we think about using breath as a down regulatory tool, we can think about emphasizing and extending the exhale over the inhale to emphasize the parasympathetic nervous system to try to extend heart rate variability, you know, and bring the level back down. Alternatively, you could extend the exhale over the inhale if, for example, you know, it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're just coming out of that circadian dip and you've got to go grab the clicker and give the presentation, right? If you need to spin yourself up, exactly the same tool of that breath you can use to upregulate as well. And so these stressful moments that can be identified can help to validate, well, yes, that was a period of stress, and then working with a coach to develop the toolbox that can help you regulate up or down to then meet the moment with the level which is most appropriate. I think that's really interesting. And you know, something idea that I just had as well is that it can almost be a first check against, you know, a more chronic, you know, mental health issue, right? That it could be that you like you say, you recognize that there's a period of stress that comes up every Friday at 4 o'clock because that is the meeting, right? And or is it something that is happening multiple times throughout the day over multiple days, right? And working with a coach and giving these tools for regulation, maybe it's helpful, but you're continuing to experience these things. Well, maybe that's time to go out and seek help from a mental health specialist, right? And I love that you have something which is identifying these moments to then have a conversation about this, right? To sort of pull it out into the open and question it and see if there's work that we can do to work against it, right? To give you the opportunity to be able to regulate in the moment.
For sure.
You know, so that we're able to work against, you know, developing things like burnout, right? And just the languishing that we've all been doing over, you know, over the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, that is so important. Now, let's be clear, this is a wellness device. It's not meant to make a diagnosis or treat disease. It's not FDA cleared for this. It's meant to inform your stress and your well-being and help you function better. But you're right, like if you do find patterns that are persistent and somebody should seek help, absolutely send them for the help that they need. And I think the idea of like bringing mental health out of the shadows is so important, right? Like and finding tools like this that allow you to have that conversation in a safe space and start to bring that in. It's not just about, you know, poor health, it's about optimizing function, right? Like getting rid of that burnout feeling, that stress, and saying, how can you find the most joy in your life? How can you elevate your daily experience to so that you feel fulfilled and you feel happy? And so it's disease isn't the absence, health isn't the absence of disease, right? Like, and so this is why like mental health isn't just the absence of stress. It's really how do you fulfill yourself and how do you find those tools, whether it's physical, whether it's mindfulness activities, like Fitbit has a bunch of those, whether it's the breath, and in some combination of those to find ways to live more meaningfully.
You know, and I think it's so interesting because you know, we've always known that performance is more than just physical, right? Like, and this is why, you know, for so long, we've known and we've accepted for dozens and hundreds of years that we need to work on our physical health. It's something that needs to be focused on. But what's exciting is that more recently, it seems that mental health is gaining that same sort of appreciation. Right? That mental health is something that we need to deliberately focus on, which is why in our game plans, right, the activities that our coaches recommend to their members, you know, we have things inclusive of training and fueling, right? Like, but then also sleep, right? Recommendations that we can make specifically on how to improve somebody's sleep, on daily movement to improve quantity and quality of movement, but then also reflection and regulation, right? So that you're able to meet those stressful moments and regulate, right? Recognize that something is off and do something about it, have the tools in the toolbox to do something about it. I think it's really exciting.
It is. Great time to be here.